Hello, everyone. Um, First, I should indeed agree with Dr. Tian. 5G industry. I think the only word missing from your presentation was metaverse. If we had added that, then the whole Mobile World Congress, the whole summation would be in 3 words. Um, what I'll talk about is a little bit of an extension of what you did. But before I get into it, I think it's a good time to acknowledge. Uh, I am new to GTI, so thanks for having me. Uh, the whole concept of collaboration and cooperation, it's a good time to acknowledge what has happened. We are not stepping into an industry that is, in formative stages and we're going to find new collaborations and cooperations. Yes, we will. John talked about bringing the village along, but we have brought the village along. We have connected half of the population of this planet with internet. There are 15 billion IoT devices, expected to go to 30 billion IoT devices by the end of the decade. Several societies that were not connected are digital savvy today, and it has helped the GDP of so many countries. So we should acknowledge what has happened, and this has happened because of collaboration with research, collaboration on standards, interoperability, best practices, devices, and that's why we made the achievements. Today, as it stands, our industry is considered to be critical infrastructure for the world to meet its economic and sustainability goals. So we should just start with that acknowledgement that collaboration has worked. And GTI has played a very important role in bringing this together across continents. But if you think about it, and this was talked about in the panel as well, the time for collaboration and the increase in cooperation and the new players is coming now. We've connected people, we've connected devices, but what's next? And when we think of that, it's inevitable that we bring a player into this room called the cloud. Telecom industry, the way it is built, we were built on protocols. But it's well known that platforms, they move much faster than protocols. And at times, we have actually been impeded by our own protocols. We're sometimes too slow because we're trying to find the last level of interoperability. We're trying to make sure that, every handshake in every protocol works for every standard, and that sometimes impedes our pace. And that's why when we look at this collaboration, extension of collaboration from a Nokia standpoint, we think it's time for the network to handshake with the cloud. And if you look at how several industries have already been impacted by the cloud, if you had talked to an enterprise CIO and say, hey, what is it that's going to make your business better? If you go back a decade, the last word they would have thought about is cloud. Hey, I've got my data centers. But now today it's sort of ubiquitous that cloud is impacting every industry. And it is also ubiquitous that connectivity is impacting every industry. Now it's time to bring the two together. The high resilience, the high capacity, the low latency that we bring from networks has to marry the elasticity, the flexibility, and consumability of the cloud. Those are the three attributes that we need to learn from the cloud industry. Elasticity, resources are available when they need. We are flexible, and we are making our product consumable, easily consumable. And the combination of two will actually be the right evolution for this asset called network. And to us at Nokia, this is the future. If you look at the generations of technology, I was not on the stage when you asked the question, what's the advice for GTI? But I'll just give my unsolicited advice anyway. I think it's important that when we think of GTI 3.0, and we think of 5G advanced, we think of not just how do we get to the next air interface called release 18. I think that would be a half the race run. We need to think about how to make it more consumable. Why would 5G advanced with red cap or side link or enhanced uplink would make the world different? And the only way to achieve that is to make that technology called 5G advanced far more consumable than what 5G is today. The enterprise CIO that looks at connectivity should not think of connectivity as a basic need. They should think of it as a differentiator. They should be able to unleash the power of connectivity, and for that cloud is needed. And then we also in the panel very rightfully talked about bring the enterprises along. You know, we've talked about in this industry, as a collective, telco industry doesn't grow very much, because we are sort of focused on making sure everyone is connected. The subscriber age of telecom will run out of gas at the end of the decade if we don't bring enterprises along. We have a footprint, but we don't think so much about our arm print. We can impact every possible industry. We have started to do that. So while we look at the network and the southbound asset, integrate that with cloud, on northbound, we need these enterprise CIOs to be part of this equation, because they will make the judgment whether there is a difference between Wi-Fi and 5G. They will make the difference between 6G and 5G. And they will say, yeah, this works for me because I can actually get three key attributes. When you go to the factory floor, they are not thinking about throughput. When you go to the factory floor, they are not thinking about latency. They are thinking about three simple attributes. Productivity. Can I do more with the resources I have? They're thinking about efficiency. Can I do the same thing I'm doing with less resources? And increasingly, they're thinking about safety and sustainability. And if our product called 5G Advanced and going to 6G can get them to really support increase in productivity, efficiency, and safety, we've done a very, very good job. And that's why we need to now increase the scope of collaboration, and we need to bring this important player along called the enterprise. And for us to be able to do that, it is important that we make our product more consumable. It is not today. I like this example, and I think the speaker next to me will talk about cloud a lot. Amazon used to sell books. They sell more APIs than they sell books today. That's the transformation we need in our industry as well. And you know, at Bell Labs Consulting, we did a study, and this is an interesting one. If we take a rounded number called 100, and this is the global GDP for a second, 70% of the global GDP sits with physical industries. Manufacturing, mining, transportation. 30% of the global GDP, it sits with more service-led digital industries. Financial services, retail. These industries have largely digitalized. The 70% of the GDP has not digitalized to the optimal it can. And what we call is now is the time for inversion. We need to digitalize these 70%. The manufacturing floors need to be digitalized, mines, ports. And for that to happen, we need to allow our product to be far more consumable. We need to make sure, and of course, you know, we've talked about this fancy world where the networks are more programmable. It's not just about, you know, creating a few APIs and getting done with it. It's not about just moving every network workload to a CNF and we are done with it. Is it a containerized workload? Yay. In fact, I don't know of a single telco in the world, I don't know of a single operator in the world that has simply moved, for example, their core network or their OSS network to the cloud and their stock price goes up. Never happens. Why? They went to the cloud. That was the promised land. Because they didn't make it consumable. There was not a single actor called the developer on their network. And if that actor called the developer is not on their network, what's the point? So for us to get the digitalization of this 70% of the GDP, we need to make our product more consumable. And our belief and our estimates at the Bell Labs Consulting is that this would lead to about $8 trillion of economic growth. And that growth comes on the back of collaboration of our industry with several enterprises. And finally, before I hand it off, I think it's important to think about how partnerships works, how collaboration works. Collaboration when it comes to standards, absolutely. It works. When you go to 3GPP, there are no politicians there, they're engineers. They find the best solutions that physics can offer and that come back into the industry and we build a great network. Standardization works. Interoperability works. The single most interoperable and open interface in the world is this device connecting to the network. It doesn't matter who provides the network, it doesn't matter who sold the network, it doesn't matter which device you have, and it doesn't matter which country you are in, your device will work. And that works. But going from standards and interoperability to true partnership, it takes effort. And it takes a little bit of a sacrifice. It's collective value creation, it's not individual app value appropriation at that time that's necessary. And when you look at these kind of partnerships, and by the way, there's a huge debate in Europe around these partnerships as well, as to who should bear the cost, etc. It's a very valid debate. But at the end of the day, partnership requires that there's a joint win-win. And that's why, from Nokia, when we look at it, we look at partnership with cloud companies, we look at partnership with system integrators, we look at partnership with enterprises, we look at development stage partnership with startups and innovation companies. And a collective partnership is what will allow us to get to that $8 trillion of GDP growth that we aspire to. And that also means that we need to, at Nokia, be open to it. It's very hard. When you have a company that is more than 100 years old, everything is NIH. So we need to change and say, we can't do it all. We know that the rest of the industry can't either. And that's why we have offered now ourselves a platform called Nokia Partners. And we see very good success. Last year we were announced as Partner of the Year by Google and Microsoft. So we were doing something right. At the GTI Summit, we got the award for innovation, so thank you so much for that. We have an initiative called Network as Code. This is essentially then transporting our physical asset called the network into a pure programmable interface for a very important called developer to come and play in our playground. And we have gone from extremes, right? We had a walled garden that our industry was, and then suddenly everything went over the top. There has to be a middle ground. And for that, we need to change our product. And then we have also now taken a very important and strong stance that as we build 6G, it needs to be an open and disaggregated architecture. This will allow for all the players in the industry to have some value for themselves. With that, I think I should conclude. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Great panel, great speech by Cristiano. Thank you, Dr. Chian. Very interesting.